Hi everyone, this is Chris.
And this is Julia, and this is episode number 17 of A Bar Above's Mixology Talk podcast. We're here to simplify the world of mixology and craft cocktails so you can make and drink craft cocktails without worrying about taking it too seriously.
Seriously. So this week we're going to go ahead and get inside a bartender's head. And be careful, it's going to be a bumpy ride today.
I don't recommend it. You should probably stop listening now for your own safety.
Yeah, or at least wear seatbelts.
Seatbelt. Good idea. Seatbelts. Especially while driving. So when Chris and I started dating, this is a great way to start a story, isn't it? So when Chris and I started dating, he'd take me out to fancy restaurants and bars, and I had no idea what all the rules were. I'm a
fancy man.
You are a fancy man. Clearly, that's why I dated you. And I just didn't know all of the rules that went with these sort of places because I never went to fancy restaurants growing up. So I could usually play dumb and just kind of...
Because she's cute.
Hey, wait a minute. I could play dumb and follow his lead or just ask him what to do in that situation. But this week's podcast is for everybody else who doesn't have Chris on their arm, and they better not. And we're going to help you out to know some of the unspoken rules of restaurants and bars so you don't accidentally do something impolite.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that bar and restaurant guests probably don't know about how bartenders get paid and some of the things that might be problematic for them as well. So the vast majority of guests want to be polite and respectful to the bartender and pretty much everybody they run across in a restaurant scenario. And today we're going to give you a few tips on how to do that. So these are going to cover some of those odd outlier scenarios of what do I do in this kind of circumstance.
Exactly. And these are situations where I know in the past I have thought to myself, I'm really not sure what to do here. I want to be polite. What do I do?
Right. And everybody kind of around the table just kind of scratches their head. You know, so we're trying to go after those kind of scenarios.
Exactly. So let's talk about seating. From a bartender's perspective, the seats at the bar or at the bar tables are their paycheck.
Yeah.
Since most bartenders get paid peanuts per hour, most of their wages are actually from tips. I think a lot of people kind of know that. But if you're sitting at the bar taking up a seat, just kind of keep that in mind because you should really order something while you're there. Yeah,
and this isn't a hard and fast rule because like if you walk into the bar and it's slow, then obviously there's not a lot of value in, the real estate there.
Right.
But if it's a super busy Friday night and you're sitting at the bar drinking water, then there might be a better use of that space,
Right. Now, of course, if you're the DD and there's 4 people in your party or even 2 people in your party, they get it. And I've never had an issue with somebody getting grumpy about that. But I think it's just something to keep in mind is just what you're doing does impact their take-home pay. So it's something to think about.
Right. And there's no hard and fast rules of how many drinks you should have per hour and that kind of stuff. But, just kind of be considerate if you're going to be sitting at the bar. And I will say that I come from a fine dining background. So a lot of this stuff is going to be applying to that kind of scenario.
We did say you're fancy.
I'm a fancy man. I don't have a fancy mustache. I need to work on that.
You should work on that.
But yeah, if you're with a bunch of people and you're waiting for a table or seat, maybe not sitting at the bar is probably better for you because if you're going to be leaving in 5 minutes, then, that might be some better use of space.
Exactly. Just kind of keep that in mind.
Right.
And I totally get that bars are social environments, and if there's a bunch of seats open, stay all night. That's totally fine. It's just a matter of sort of keeping an eye on the situation.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're not sure what to order, that's totally fine. But if you need to give me some sort of idea what you're looking for, so be very general in this case. If you want something sweet, tell me that. If you want something with rum, the more information you tell me in broad terms, the better I can make a drink for you.
And it's not that the bartender's lazy and doesn't want to do their work. I mean, when I talk to Chris about this in the bar, it's because, it's always because the bartender wants to make something you're going to like. The worst thing in the world is if he or she makes something, hands it to you, and you go, oh, I don't like this.
Right. And we're in the hospitality industry. We're here to make you feel comfortable and all that. So, I don't want to play a guessing game.
Yeah.
The more information you give me, the better it's going to be for both of us.
Positive or negative.
Right.
I've gone to bars and said, well, this was earlier in my drinking career. Is that a career?
I think it might actually be now, yeah.
In a past life, I've gone up to bars and said, I don't like gin. No, don't worry. I've converted since then. Please, no pitchforks.
Gin is beautiful.
But back in the day, I had a problem with Christmas trees. So I would say I prefer not gin, and I generally like something sweeter. That was my standard. And that was usually enough, and that was great. I almost got something that was really nice. But I think it's really helpful to give them something to work off of.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, the more information you give us, the better it's going to be for both of us. You're going to be happy, we're going to be happy, and we're in a business of making people happy.
And why waste booze?
And also, we're in a business to make people drunk, so there's that. They usually go hand in hand.
On a similar note, moving on, if it's really, really busy, and it's like 10 people deep at the bar, and you've got a large group order that you want to place, please try to make sure everybody's figured out what they want. I know, it would be really great if there was time for all 10 people to go up to the bartender and tell them their life story and what they like to drink. But in that scenario, it's just not realistic, and the bartender's going to get frustrated.
Yeah, and I've had this occasion happen to me quite a bit, and it's like you get a group of 10 people together, and one guy gets the attention of the bartender, and I go up there and get their order, and then they start talking about what they want to drink. And I get that it's a group dynamic thing, but don't be.
You've got 42 other people to serve.
Yeah, exactly. So if I try to kind of validate everybody's order one at a time, it's going to take me 8 minutes, and in that time, there's 25 other people that I could have helped in that time.
Exactly. Yeah. So again, I just sort of keep that in mind. Take a look around, see how busy it is. If everybody wants a bespoke cocktail made just for them, go on a slow night.
Right, exactly. And there's always circumstances. If it's slow, I have no problem doing that. I love doing that. But if, there's 10 other people waiting behind you,
it's going to be frustrating.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. So here's one that, it's funny, I actually asked Chris about this before we spoke, because I really wasn't sure what the rule was, and that is cell phones.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know, I just might be an old man at this point, and, I want
true.
everybody to get off my lawn.
Man.
But
fancy.
But there's always kind of those scenarios where, like, you're on public transportation, for instance, and you just hear too much information. And
you don't want to know.
Yeah, exactly. So cell phones are kind of one of those things I think we're all trying to figure out as a society.
That's true.
What's appropriate and what's not. In my opinion, if you're at a bar, it's a social place. You're there to hang out with your friends, and you're there to interact with other people and meet new people. It's a social environment. So if you get a phone call, if it takes longer than like 2 minutes,
maybe step outside.
Yeah, do yourself a favor, step outside. And because the thing that I think most people don't understand about this is bar environments are typically loud. So in order for you to be heard, you raise your voice, which means you talk over everyone else, and then the person on the other end of the phone is getting blasted by you speaking really loudly.
And everybody around you hears one half of a really loud conversation.
Yeah, and it's really weird. It's kind of impolite, and it kind of gives this message that I'd rather be somewhere else if, it's a long conversation.
Yeah, I could see that.
So, So call
your mom, but call her later.
Right, exactly. Or if you're going to break up with your boyfriend or girlfriend, maybe you step outside for a few minutes. I don't know.
Yeah, so I think I was wondering about this because I think of being on a cell phone talking to my friends as being kind of social. But I think Chris makes a really good point, and that is that bars are what they are. They're a fun place to be because you're in a room full of sort of fun people who are having an experience with one another. So I do think that minimizing your cell phone time is definitely a good thing. If you need to catch a phone call because your friend's going to meet you at that bar and you need to figure out what time, fine, no problem. But if you're going to be giving your life story to someone, maybe step outside.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, couple minutes, then you're fine. Anything more than that, it gets a little bit awkward.
So, do you remember, maybe this is only me, way back in college when you were at the bar with your girl or guy friends and you were talking about the bartender? Well, there's really something you should know. The bartender heard all of it. Everything, every word, every single syllable, and even if we acknowledge it or not, we heard you. And they remember it. It's awkward. It's like we have bartenders as in industry have one of the most amazing memories I've ever seen in my entire life. It's so creepy. Yeah, like if I don't see somebody like in a couple of years, I'll remember the last time I saw them, I'll remember the conversation, and I'll remember what they were drinking. It's weird. I remember Chris would come home from work and he would tell me like, oh, I saw one of my regulars from 6 years ago. That's not normal.
Yeah, it happens.
I can't remember people I met last week.
Yeah, and it's the same thing applies when like we meet other bartenders. I'm like, oh man, I haven't seen you in 3 years. You were working at this place, that place, and the other. And it's just like, oh yeah, man, it's good to see you again.
It's crazy. Yeah,
it really is.
So if you're at the bar, you should probably keep in mind that the bartender hears everything.
Right. And it's, it is my job to kind of figure out who you are, what you like, and, how I can give you a really good experience. So if you don't want the bartender to know that you're not having a good time, just don't talk about it at the bar.
Yeah, if there's something that you don't want the bartender to know, something personal, something medical, just don't say it.
Exactly.
They don't want to know either.
Yeah,
it's mutual.
I remember I was working at a bar and I was upstairs and it was only a very, very small bar. It's like 4 seats. And
that was a 4-seater, yeah.
Yeah, there's nowhere for me to go. And this would be a place where a lot of people would bring their first dates.
Oh, no.
And I have nowhere to go. I was literally 3 feet from your conversation. And the things I heard up there were, I could write a book on it.
We should write a book.
Like a tabloid.
Stay tuned, folks. Book coming soon.
Yeah, that might be actually a really good blog to read.
So on the note of first dates,
yeah,
I think another thing that can be a little bit problematic is asking the bartender to play Matchmaker for you.
Yeah, and usually it's a really normally it's just like, hey, I'd like to buy this person a drink. Do you mind getting them a drink for me? And I have no problem with that. Of course, if I can introduce you, that's great. But I don't want you to ask me to get information, advice or anything like that.
Yeah,
I think advice I don't really mind, but
there's a line. Yeah. Exactly. I mean, I think there's stuff that the bartender can help you with. Like, I think it's a great move to say, see that lady in the red shirt? Can you go send her a sparkling cocktail? That's great. That's a great move. It's a good a good icebreaker for you, not the bartender. So after the drink comes, you go over and speak with her and get her number. It's
right.
Don't ask the bartender, can you make her a drink and please get me her number?
Yeah, and after I do that, don't continue to talk about that person. It gets really weird for everyone.
Does that happen?
It happens all the time.
That is weird.
Yeah, so just,
Do you think she likes me?
Right.
Does she like me?
Exactly.
Did she talk about me?
School. Do me a favor, send her this note. No, I'm not going to send her the note.
Oh, passing. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Like on a cocktail napkin,
yeah.
Will you go to prom with me? Check
exactly.
1, yes, no, and they write maybe at the bottom.
Oh, man. I think that's a really good app design.
Oh, that's a good app.
Yeah.
Man, we're just full of ideas today. So anyway, folks, if you want to hit on someone at the bar, I think that's fantastic. There are ways to do it, but you're going to have to do your own dirty work.
Yeah.
Literally.
I don't even know what that means.
I'm not going anywhere with that. So this has been a little bit of a crazy episode, but I hope it has been a little bit helpful for you. I didn't know all of these rules in the beginning. Actually, I didn't know any of these rules in the beginning. And so if you walk into a bar, hopefully you've got a little bit more tricks up your sleeve for being a polite and fun customer.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, it's the same thing we always say. Take a look around at your environments and take cues from where you're at. And just remember, for us as bartenders, time is money. We want to make sure that you have a great time and you're really enjoying yourself while you're there, but don't monopolize our time.
You got to pay the bills.
Yeah, exactly. And, if it's slow, then I would love to just hang out and chat with you.
We should talk about your life story, absolutely, if it's slow. But
I love it.
There's sort of a time and a place for that.
Right.
So now that you're a pro at bar etiquette, let's go back to talking about what is inside the glass. Next week, we're actually going to be talking about one of the cheapest cocktail ingredients there is.
Yeah, so you might have noticed in the beginning of this episode, we introduced the podcast as a Bar Above's Mixology Talk podcast. That's because we thought we should tell you about our blog.
Yeah, if you're a huge cocktail nerd, which I have a sneaky suspicion you might be if you made it to episode, what is this, 17?
I know, that's crazy.
How are we doing this? If you made it this
Very
far
badly,
and
evidently.
you're a huge cocktail nerd, you might like our cocktail blog. It's a video blog where Chris goes into a lot more detail about bar and cocktail techniques, and I think you might like it. So head on over to abarabove.com. It's like above a bar, but the other way around.
They're
And
never going to get there now.
we've got a redirect. You can actually go to aboveabar.com and you'll still get there. It's okay.
Perfect. So, all right, everyone. We'll see you guys next time.
We'll see you next time.
Cheers.
Cheers. Never miss an episode by subscribing in iTunes or YouTube. And as always, check out the show notes by clicking on the right.